Hi, good evening, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, 3 chapters per day, lesson 141, the rules of Bikkurim from chapter 6 until chapter 8. The central topic of our subject tonight is very much connected to this particular day, Rosh Hashanah, where is the day of the creation of Odom and Chava. And as we know that under the influence of Chava, where it says that she extinguished Chalosei Shel Oilom, and for that reason, though that the mitzvah of Chalom is upon everybody, but nevertheless, in reality, ladies are the one who are customary. They are separating the Challah. And as everybody knows that in the name Hachein or Chana, hinted those particular mitzvahs that they are belong to the performance of the Isha. And Ches stands for Chalo, Nun for Nido, and Hadlokas Neon. And exactly in the words of the Medrash, where he is asking Mipnei Manitan Lo Mitzvahs Chalo, why the mitzvahs Chalo were given to her. So Alidei Shekilkelo Esodom Orishon, since she was the one who spoiled or damaged Odom Orishon Sheyogmar Chalosei Shel Oilom, therefore Nitan Lo Mitzvahs Chalo. Therefore, there is also something very interesting about the source of Mitzvahs Chalo. Contrary to the majority of the matnois kehuna, of the gifts that are given to the kohen, which most of them are mentioned in Parshas Koirach in connection to the rebel that Koirach was waging against Aharon and against Moshe, which was the chet of Koirach. When it comes to the mitzvah of Chalo, it is mentioned in Parsha Shlach. After the Meraglim persuade the entire people to complain against their intended entry to Israel, and Hashem got angry at them and promised, Bamidbar hazeh iplu pigreichem, but immediately he gave them the mitzvah of Chalo, where it was projected a sense of nechomo, of comfort, that despite the punishment that is about to come upon them, nevertheless, at the end, they will enter Israel, and the mitzvah of Afroshas Chalo came as a guaranteed that after all, their entry to Israel is assured, and the indication for it is the mitzvah Chalah that is being given to them. From the details of the particular mitzvah that are being covered at the first chapter, so first of all, Chalo is applicable only to those dough that is made out of the 5 types of grain, which includes wheat, barley, oats, spelt, excluding type of a dough that is made of legumes and rice. Since in the Torah it is written, Reishis Arisoiseichem, the beginning of your dough, implies that any dough is not yours. For example, if it belongs to Hekdesh, or if it belongs to a non-Jew, will be exempt from Chalo. There is some gray areas. For example, a Chalo that is Chalois Toido Urikike Nazir, Chalois that are part of the thanks offering a person brings for a salvation that happened to him, or he is a Nazir. So depends whether the primary Chalo made for his personal offering, then it is considered Kodosh, and therefore it will be exempt of Chalo because this is a property of Hekdesh. Or if a person intended for commercial use, to sell it to those people who are about to bring korbanos toido and rikikei nozer. In such a case, it will be subject to Chalah, since any commercial sellers of this Chalah, they have in their mind, in a case that they won't eat it themselves, they will sell it to the public. And therefore, they should, in case that the buyers of the public won't buy it from him, he will eat it not as part of his korban, but for personal, and for that reason it will be chayav in Chalah. Another exclusion from Chalah, if a person were making the dough only for animal consumption. However, there is a gray area as well. In a case that it is made for dogs, however, the shepherds occasionally will eat from this Chalah, such a Chalah will be subject to a Afroshas Chalah. When it comes to the dough, the Rambam writes, no matter in what type of liquid you prepare the dough, whether with water, wine, oil, it will make the dough subject to a Afroshas Chalah. However, if the person is intending not to bake it the traditional way, but to bake it via the heat of the sun or cook it in a pot, this is not considered baking and it will be exempt from Chalah. The measurement, the minimum measurement of a iso that will be chayav and Chalah, it is approximately in the weight of 1.7 kilo, which represents, and it is also very easy to remember since right now we are approaching the Chodesh Hashvi'i. Chodesh, not only just the 7, but also must be a satiating spiritually, but there is also element of satiating when it comes to lechem, masbi'a lechol chai rotzoin, the idea of a soiva, and therefore it comes about also in the number of 7. Any measurement of a volume of about 7 al 7 al 7, which means 7 width, 7 length, 7 high, slightly less than this, and also happen to be the remez of the Chalah is about 43 beitzim, which is again the gematria of Chalah, the number 43. A person should not intentionally will exempt himself from Chalah by baking many doughs less than the kashir that is necessary. However, if at lechatchile his intention was to have a small and keep it small, it's one thing, but the idea is to trick it and to avoid Chalah, that is forbidden. The separation of the Chalah, though ideally it should be made while it is in a form of a dough, nevertheless, if for one reason or another he was not doing it then, he can do it after it was baked already, since in the Torah it is written, "V'hoyo ba'acholchem milechem ha'oretz," which implies that it's okay for him to separate the Chalah even min ha'ofri, even after it was baked. But again, in order to be metzaref, to combine many breads into a Chalah, must be a basket. The oven is not sufficient to be used as a metzaref, as a combiner, to combine different breads into the exposure to the chiyuv of Chalah. The second chapter covers a situation when the idea of tziruf, combining, will be effective and one not. For example, two types that none of them they have kashir. They don't have a measurement, and they belong to two different people. Will I be able to combine them and therefore need to be mafrish the chalo? And the answer only in a case that is clearly that not one of them is makpid. Makpid is very careful that the other person should not touch his share. At the moment that it is known that they are not makpid, then it will be okay to be metzaref them to kashir and be mechayev them in a chalo. When it comes to the iso, to the dough of one person, so as long as this is the same min, the same type, for example, if we're speaking about chitos, every one of them is a min. So if it is same min, they will be mitztaref. If it's different minim, they will not gonna be mitztaref. However, when it comes to kemach, when a person was combining different flours who come from different types of grain, they will be able to be added, to be mitztaref, even though it is different types. If there is one dough that is less than kashir from one side, and the other dough is from the other side, so the chidush that the Rambam is mechadesh over here, that even though the dough that is connecting between one dough is less than the kashir and the other dough is less than the kashir, in reality is exempt from chalo. Nevertheless, as long as theoretically with or was exposed to a chiyuv chalo, this type of dough will be able to combine and to connect between the two doughs. And he gives two examples. Example number one, a dough that the challah was already taken. A second example, if the dough belongs to Hekdesh, though that in reality, as we have mentioned, Hekdesh is exempt from chalo. But since theoretically, if I would redeem the Hekdesh, then the redeemed dough will be subject to chalo. So since on a theoretical level, it is shayech to be mafrish the chalo from that type of dough, therefore it can serve as a connecting dough between two doughs that are less than the kashir, and with their connection, it will make them to one dough. There is a similar situation where a exposure to a dough, to an exemption, will prevent this dough in the future to be mitztaref to a shiur of chayav bechalo. Interesting illustration. Two Jews who owned a iso and decided to break their partnership, and as a result of their partnership break, the original iso, the original dough, was previously had the measurement of a chalo, but as a result of the division, has no more the proper measurement. So at the moment it was exposed to this exemption, which occurred as a result of this division, so even if later a Jew will add more dough to this dough which was exempt already, it won't help to be metzaref, to add it to a shiur a chayav bechalo, since it was already exposed to a shiur, to a ptur, to an exemption, so therefore it remains in a state of exemption forever. If was a mixture from a dough that had already challah, if the particular challah which a person was mafresh was mixed with another dough that was not mafresh, so then there is an entire procedure how a person will take care of this situation, and basically additional hafroshe must take place. A person can prepare an entire dough which will be in a state of purity, of ritual purity, in order to serve as a futuristic bank for future baking that he will be doing in the future. In other words, he takes over here a dough and he declares that whatever is in this territory will be applicable as challah for future baking. By doing so, he will save the risk of and the effort to actually separate, because each and every separation will or may expose to a possibility of to become tomei. So in order to save this risk, he wants to prepare a future challah, and this is okay until the point that a sufficient amount was accumulated, and then he will give it all to the Kohen. The third chapter deals about the ideal time that the dough is being subject to a Afroshas Challah, which is the point when you're putting the water, the liquid, in the flour and you're turning it to a dough. Even though that part of it is still floury, as long as the flour part is not exceeding from the amount of omer, which is the amount of challah, as we said before, 7 by 7 by 7 fingers, so it will be fine. Even though it may be exceed, he will be able to take care by declaring that the challah will be a challah only in the future, when everything will be turning to the proper and sufficient amount of dough. This point is very critical because it has many implications. And the implications are when a person is or dedicating it to the temple, or selling it, or later he is reverse selling it. So the critical point to determine whether the challah is chayev, is liable for hafroshas challah, if the bread, if the dough is liable for hafroshas challah, to determine at what point was it in a domain that is exempt from challah, and the point is when and by whom the dough was at the time when the water came in touch with the flour. Ideally, a person should not make the challah in a state of tumah, but if the water is too far from him, so after the fact and by the eved, he can do it in a state of tumah. And towards the end, there is an entire protocol how and until what extent a person can directly or indirectly help and support in the baking process of people who are not careful in the tahalo, in the ritual purity of preparing the challah. So again, thank you very much for participating, and I want to wish everybody a ksiva v'chasim v'toiva, a good bench to you. Thank you.